Thank you very much for everyone attending. I'm hearing we have some people from a little bit all over, so always great to gather today to this now monthly event. So the way we go for people who are just joining us is please post questions in the chat, and then the team is sorting the questions and then flagging them to me. Feel free to ask anything. I mean, there's really nothing that I'm not prepared to talk about. It's just about the time that we have. I'll start though with a couple of questions that were already submitted by people before, because I think it's a way for us to get started. Pretty quick questions in the sense that I'm not going to go into like too much details. These are pretty tactical, but actually quite interesting things, I think, for the community. And then in about maybe 10, 15 minutes, we'll switch to like questions from the audience. So feel free to fire away right now. So I'll start. Is there a plan to provide an if-then-else workflow action to make designing workflows easier than having to use a linear path with a lot of only when? Yes, it's definitely something that we want to do. In fact, the idea behind the new workflow tab that we released last year was precisely to allow that, because now it generates a lot of empty space on the right and the left that lets you have branching. The way we call that internally is branching. We're doing some groundwork to that in H1, so it's not something we will be able to do in the first half of the year, but we're hoping that this is something we can do in the second part of the year. Now, we live in a world that is changing extremely quickly currently, and this is true for Bubble, but also true for technology in general. I mean, if you all are watching the news, so a lot of things are happening right now. So I'm not going to give like a firm commitment on H2 because we have to be reactive, but the current thinking is to be able to release that in the second part of the year. When will the mobile app plugin builder be accessible to the general public? And then second question, completely different, but I'll take both at the same time. Will there be a robust support for dynamic linking, like deep linking soon? Yes, and that's something we're actively working on, so this is easier for me to share more of a timeline. We're aiming for like early Q2 for this, so like late March, April, maybe end of April. So that's our goal today, to work on this. This is definitely very important. The plugin, enabling people to build plugins is great for us because it's a way to basically outsource to the community, creating a lot of things that are pretty cool about phones. You can start leveraging things like native capabilities on phones that we don't have the time and the bandwidth internally necessary to take. I mean, that's what has made mobile apps so successful on the web. We want to replicate that for mobile. And so definitely a project that is actively worked on. And then deep linking also. I mean, that's one of the cool things. One thing I'm very proud of our mobile offering is that it is truly native. Like a lot of people would tell you they build native applications, but in practice, you can just do like a web application and then you wrap it. And the people know that at this point. People can see that it's working that way. And it's not what we do at Bubble. And so deep linking is part of this. How do you make sure Bubble stays easy to use for beginners, even if it adds more feature? So I said I would not go too long for responses, but this is actually something I could probably talk about for an hour, but I'll try to be fast here. The reason I could talk about that for an hour is because this has been a struggle for us for the last 14 years. I mean, when you build a creation platform like Bubble, you're going to have these challenges. You're going to have some users that are already very knowledgeable about the platform and don't really care about how easy it is to use it because they know how to use it, but they always ask for more features. And at the same time, new people that are not necessarily the most vocal ones also, because someone new that has a hard time learning the platform is not necessarily going to reach out to us to say, hey, help me do this. But we care a lot about them because ultimately for everyone to succeed, and when I mean everyone here, I mean everyone in the Bubble ecosystem, so us as a company, of course, as a platform, but also startups building on Bubble and service providers, people who do coaching or agencies, we all are happier the more people we have on the platform. It is very important to make sure the product is easier to use. So it's not going to come as a surprise that the big focus for us this year is on the AI side of things. Like we released AppGen last year, where we generated the first version of the application live after a prompt. And now we have the agent that it's still early. It's still something that we need to do a lot of work on to make it better. And so that's a lot where we're putting in some energy today. And that's actually how we're thinking about making sure the Bubble gets easier to learn for people, because not only AI introduces a new way, the agent in the editor to build things in natural language, where you can start typing what you need and it does it for you, but also it can teach you a lot of things. And that's one place where I think the ROI of us investing in AI is compounding, because not only it will be easier to use, but it will be an opportunity for us to have interactions with users like on a text basis, like we can chat. I mean, it's a chatbot, right? And you can basically tell to do this, this is how you do this. We can show some areas of the editor that people may not be aware of. So there are many opportunities we can do with this agent, and that's one of the major focus for us. The other thing that we do, and so we started working on this with a property editor. I mean, this is a long project, and as that's one thing that we discussed. I discussed last time. Like a big topic for us is how to release that without disrupting the workflow of many of our users. But we are investing on usability of the editor through new property editor, the API connector, for instance, very important surface area for our users, because you can't really build an application today without connecting to some kind of APIs. So we do these things to make the UX a little bit more standard. I would say I would actually describe that, as standard. I think we started in 2012, and because we started in 2012, we made some UX change decisions that may not be the most standard ones, and so we're standardizing a few things, and that will also help ensure the product stays easy for beginners. Are several locations in Europe still coming for other plans and enterprise? Yes, but not this second. We're doing the groundwork here. We had to delay a little bit how soon we can ship this transparently. Again, as I said, the world is changing right now, and there are a few things we need to react to ensure Bubble stays relevant. And that actually, I think, especially on the AI side, that I'm a little bit more important than the servers. The fact that we allow that on our dedicated plans gives an option to people when it starts really mattering. Usually data allocation starts becoming a real problem with the different governments when you start a certain scale. And so in practice, what we've seen is that people that have these concerns usually can move to a dedicated plan. I would encourage anyone who has these needs to reach out to us, because we are willing to see what works for people. Like our goal here is really not necessarily to try to upsell you to the maximum plans. It's actually more, we want to ensure that you can build on Bubble in a way that is safe for your business. And so if we can be creative on the type of plans we can do here, we will. But this is something that we are doing some groundwork today, but I can't share, unfortunately, a definite timeline on this. Do you have plans to fix the load speed of a Bubble app? My app is extremely slow when loading selectable list. This is pretty particular, and actually my response is going to be pretty particular here, is we're not aware of a widespread issue of loading times on apps. In fact, we measure them. We have some metrics to look at loading times across all applications every time a page loads, and it's actually probably better than it's ever been. So if you, I don't know if this person is watching today, but if you I didn't ask that question, but you have the same issue where something feels very slow in your application, this is probably something in your implementation that is not optimized. And so the best is to reach out to our team. Our team has a lot of experience looking at apps. I mean, we look at thousands of apps every day, and so we can see pretty quickly how we can improve things. It's not something, again, that is widespread. Being able to vibe code a Bubble app would be the ultimate all solution for app development. Yes, 100%. This is exactly what we're saying, in fact, and what we keep repeating to everyone. I think the best of both worlds is to have the visual editor that we currently have that is, and there are many things we need to improve it, but I'm confident, and I'm confident to say this is the best one in the world. Like, we've pushed the limits of what you can do without code further than any other team in the world. We've seen people build like real applications, like to the level of sophistication of an Airbnb or a platform like this, or other platforms like that, without writing any code. And no one, even some people claim they do that, but no one has pushed that as far as we have. And I think what we have here is fantastic. However, we do need the vibe. I don't want to call that vibe coding because there's no code, but the vibe experience. So internally, we call that vibe coding without the code, where you can chat with the editor to get the application that you built for you as you discuss with the editor. Combining the both is the best thing, will be the best thing in the world, and that's exactly what we're working on. It's 100% where we're going. We have been investing on the visual side for the last 14 years, since we started in 2012, and that's why today AI is our big focus, because that's where we need transparently to catch up. Compared to some of the tools that started that are like AI first and that generate code, they have moved faster on that because it's easier to use LLMs to generate code that generate Bubble, and so there is some extra work for us to do. But that's where we're investing a lot of our energy right now to get to that point where we have both, which I think will be the platform of the future when it comes to building software. Why is the AI agent in the app reporting something went wrong after trying to process instruction since almost a week now? I cannot talk to that because this is a particular thing. Again, here's the same thing as a page load issue. We're not aware of a widespread issue, so please, 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 if someone hits an issue like that, please report that to us, because if you report that to us, you may not, it's not widespread, but you may not be the only one, probably not the only one. And it's actually very valuable for our engineering team to have a reproduction case. When people report bugs, we ask them, how can we reproduce a bug? Reproducing bugs save us so much time that then can be used for other bugs or features. And so if you have a situation like this where you reliably can reproduce something, please share that with us, because that would be very valuable for our team to fix it. In general, fixing bugs like this takes priority over other things. And so if you want us to look into this, we'll look at that pretty quickly. With Google further tightening indexation based on page size and Bubble apps already struggling with indexability, are you planning to do some work on the SEO side? For instance, planning a native pre-render so that SEO works, SEO can index Bubble apps better. It's a known issue, but it's not something planned in the short term for us. This is one place where I think you don't necessarily want to move too fast, because the world right now is changing extremely quickly. Who knows what SEO will look like 9 months from now, frankly, because we've seen a lot, and we see that in our own analytics, actually. A lot of people find Bubble through ChatGPT today, like where they ask a question to ChatGPT about building apps without code, and Bubble is actually coming out very well ranked here. And so given all the things we have to do, investing on this is not the highest priority for us, especially because the landscape is changing. It's something we're monitoring. Thank you for bringing that up, because it's always valuable for me. I can go back to the team to mention this, but it's not something we're going to be taking action on today this second. Current AI functionality of Bubble is a turn-off. I make a prompt, and the result is not visually appealing. We're aware. We're still early on our AI journey, and that's very much where we're investing right now on quality. Like, in fact, we're talking currently about what the roadmap looks like for the year with our new VP of product that I think I introduced to the community back in London at Bubble Tour last October. And AI quality is the main thing that we keep hearing here. So please report us when there are things we're doing that are not optimal, so that we can improve. And things are getting better literally by the day. This is the first focus for the team. And I think now, about after 15 minutes, then we can go for live questions. When can we get a roadmap for the mobile native apps? We're waiting for apps in beta. This is a meaty question, actually. It's a complicated one. So I'm glad someone's actually asking this question, because I can share a few thoughts about sharing roadmaps. We share what we're currently working on. So we're currently working on the plugin editor, deep linking, in-app purchases that came out, but we're doing some fast follow to make sure everything goes well, and then overall performance. We're not making like a particular push in one specific feature for mobile right now. And so that's what we're working on. What we're hearing and what we're seeing from our users is that this is actually enough for people to get out of beta for their applications. In fact, our mobile offering right now is the one that is growing the fastest for Bubble. That's actually very exciting for us to see. And so we see people deploying apps to the stores, paying, and having apps grow on the platform. So I don't see us like lacking something that will get in your way to get your apps in beta. The reason I'm saying it's a good question is I will repeat that, and I said that individually to some people in the community already. Like, people have always this ask about, can you share your roadmap for the next year so that we know what's coming? And when my question to them when they ask that is that, show me a company that does this. Because the truth is, we can share some directions, but we cannot share a roadmap that is like too concrete for the next 12 months, because we need to keep the ability to change. Because again, the world is changing extremely quickly right now, and it would be actually doing a disservice to everyone if we start committing about what we'll do in November of this year, because the world is changing and we need to adjust. The direction for us, I mean, ultimately, we want apps on Bubble to scale, whether it's mobile or web. We do what we have to do on mobile to ensure that's true. At this point, now that in-app purchases are out, once we have plugin editor and deep linking, I feel pretty good about the feature set that we have, and this is validated by experience, because again, people, in terms of revenue, mobile is growing the fastest right now, and people start paying once their apps are live. So this is something that is definitely working. If there are things that are lacking, please flag that to us. We'll look into it. But today, the focus for us is these two things: plugin editor and deep linking, and then performance. What would be your main advice for a SaaS founder using Bubble? I mean, I've already answered that question quite a few times in this EMA, so I'll go very quickly. But make an effort. Two things: make an effort to learn the product. Very important to do invest some time in learning the product, because if you want to get the full power of the visual interface that we have, it does take some learning. I'm not going to lie; it takes some learning. It takes very little learning compared to code. If you use a vibe coding tool, at some point you're going to have to look at the code, and then you actually back to what you had to do 10 years ago, which is go to some kind of coding boot camps. It's going to be easier because AI can speak natural language to you, but the truth is you're going to have to look at the code. Instead, reading Bubble, learning how to use Bubble will take you between, I've seen everything from like 2 to like 20 hours, but if you do that seriously, then you'll have a lot of optionality. The other thing I would say is that I always recommend think about the product a little bit on paper before starting building it, so that you can think of the different flows and everything. Jumping into building too quickly sometimes backfires. How do you see no code versus vibe coding? With a merge, how would you position? I've actually already kind of answered that, but it's not exactly they will merge. It's not exactly they will merge, because vibe coding ultimately will always use code, and we at Bubble are very opinionated that code is not the right medium to build business applications today. Like the fact is, if you're building a marketplace, you should be thinking about apartments, you should be thinking about buttons, you should be thinking about charging a credit card. You shouldn't be thinking about ifs and else and semicolons, even if an AI is writing it for you. And so it's not like vibe coding and visual programming will be merged. What I think is a winning platform, now, of course, as founder of Bubble, I have a little bit of a bias here, but what I think the winning platform to build software will be a visual language like Bubble with this natural language experience that is described today as vibe coding, but it's not. It's vibe coding without the code. Is there any internal discussions about providing AI tools to help debugging by reading logs and being able to search to the app JSON? Yes, for the agent, like a big focus for us. So AI quality for the agent is very important, and the reason why sometimes we have poor quality responses from the agent is because the agent needs to have full context of the application. So for the app JSON, 100%. That's exactly what, in fact, what the AI team is doing is, and that's why it takes a little bit more time for us to do that compared to other vibe coding tools that can basically take whatever is getting out of the LLMs, Claude in particular, and show that to their users. For us, we need to think about teach the AI how to understand the app JSON. So that we are definitely doing. Logs is currently not something that we are investing on from the AI point of view, and not a major point of focus for us. In practice, there are many tools that exist in the community that people can use to look at their logs, something I would love to address. But in today's world where it's running very fast, it's important for us to be laser focused, and AI quality does not mean looking at logs today. Are there features to identify orphan code or workflow steps that can be eliminated? Are there any other code hygiene features? So we have a feature for that, actually. We have a feature that is called like optimize application that would delete things that are not used to keep the app object smaller. It's not something we're actively focusing on. Again, we have a lot of things to do, and this is something that actually I think people can do by hand if they want. The one thing I will say, though, is we do a lot of work behind the scene to ensure that whatever is sent in run mode to the client, to the browser or the phone, is optimized. And so if you have something, for instance, I'm not going to use the example of a workflow step, but let's say a style. If you have a style that is not used by any element on your page, we're not going to send the data describing the style to the page so that we don't send unnecessary data that slow things down. Now, it is better to delete them because the less things in your application, the better. It's always easier to manipulate. It's easier to invite a new team member to look at it. However, it's not necessarily going to have a meaningful impact on performance because we are behind the scene making a lot of optimization. How will Bubble continue to compete for market space against fully AI builders like Lovable and Replit? Yes, it is a competitive landscape. We're competing because we're having a very different approach here. Our different approach comes down to two things. First of all, we're visual. We're not code-based. This is a bet that we're making here, but our vision is that, again, a visual language is better than code. And so it's taking a little bit more time for us to get good enough on the AI side because we have this extra translation step between the output of the LLMs and Bubble. But I'm very confident we'll prove to the market this year that this is the winning combination to win. So we compete because we're easier to use, because we're visual and not code-based. That's the first thing. You don't need to be an engineer to use it. There is right now, I think, a lot of excitement and honeymoon phase with vibe coding tools because people feel like they're software engineers because you talk to an AI and you get code. But that's also because these applications most of the time are not used in production at scale. And so, yes, it's great. You feel great, right? You type something in natural language and you get some code and you think, wow, I'm actually, I can do things that a software engineer can do. But the job of a software engineer is not to generate the first lines of code. The job of a software engineer is when your servers will crash at 4 a.m. because for some reason, some hackers decided to go after your website because it's fun. How do you get that back up? Today, vibe coding will not do that for you. Bubble does that automatically. And that's the second thing that makes us different and where we compete is that we're a full platform that has been around for 14 years. And we have the DevOps side of things that ensure that your applications don't crash. So these two things combined means that applications built on Bubble have scale. In fact, one of the things I've started doing on social that people in the audience may have noticed is that I'm starting to showcase more and more like success stories of Bubble applications in the numbers. How much revenue they're having, how fast they scaled, how much money have they raised. And we can do that because we have that platform. And so the way we compete is by sharing more of these stories, of course, making our AI better, but also sharing more of these stories so that people know that if you're trying to build an application that is meant to scale, Bubble is the place to go. Frankly, vibe coding today is not. Is there any plans for our plan updates for the database and backend? Not too sure what people are referring to here. We always update our backend in the sense that we always ensure that this is working well. I mean, our platform team is looking at dashboards where they look at what we call in computer science latencies in engineering, looking at how long it takes for queries to complete and everything. And so we have updates that go out every single day. When we identify something inefficient, the team is on that. We don't have like a major, we're not going to be changing our backend completely from one technology to another. At this point, the technology that we're using is very mature. Postgres is something that has been around for like a long time and works very well for databases. We're not planning a major upgrade, but we are doing a lot of incremental improvements to ensure that it works better. Any plans on adding dark mode to the editor? No. I would love that to happen, frankly. If it were as easy as taking a day for someone to do it, we would. The truth is to do that cleanly, it would take more time. And given all the things that we have to do, even though I agree this is more modern and kind of nicer for the eyes, given all the things we have to do, this is not something that I think makes sense for us to put some engineering time on it. When will AI agent be available for old, not AI-generated projects? Yes, I know this is a question that keeps coming back a lot in these AMAs, and I know it's a pain point, and that we're working on it. Definitely in this year in H1, like we're working on this. We're going to start with blank applications, so not AI-generated applications, but applications that are fresh, new, not generated by AI, where you can use the agent. The reason we cannot make it available to all applications immediately is because there are pretty large apps out there. Like I've seen apps that are in the hundreds of megabytes when you download the JSON file that describe the application. And AI is not necessarily great at handling that big amounts of structured objects. And so we're dealing with some of the limitations that exist on the LLM side. And what I don't want is us to release that. I mean, sure, we could make it available, but then if it starts crashing as soon as you ask something, or if it gives you wrong responses, this is just going to be a poor experience for everyone. And so I want the foundation to be more solid first before doing this. So my best guess here, but this is a guess today because there are some nodes we still are running out, is going to be probably around late H1, like first half of the year, but it's something we're working on. You currently run Bubble as vibe coding tool. I was shocked to see that. Why? Not exact. I mean, I'm curious to hear why the people asking this question say that, because no, we don't think of ourselves as vibe coding precisely because there is no code in Bubble. The way I describe it socially, but I don't think I've shared ever that on like a more official platform or on social, is it's vibe coding experience without the code. Meaning like you have this natural language experience where you can chat with the editor and they do the things for you. To be clear, we don't see us as a direct competitor to vibe coding because we're not code-based. We see us as like an app development platform that offer like a vibe coding experience. Is it possible to register for IP on developed apps on Bubble? Yes, 100%, it's actually the same as code. At the end of the day, when you register IP, you don't really register the code. You're going to be registering your design, your concept, your workflows not in a bubble sense, but workflow in when the user does this is what happens. And if you can do that with code, you can do that with bubble. In general, and maybe this is a cultural thing that depends on countries, I don't think many people, for instance, where I am today in the United States, register IP for applications because it's very hard to defend if you go to court. So I'm not sure it necessarily makes sense for your business, but in some locations, it might actually make sense. And I've definitely seen people do that. Can we copy a web app into Bubble to clone it and after complete it with Bubble features? I mean, it's not like you can say, okay, here is the code, convert that into a Bubble application. I would love to do that one day. It's something we are already starting to think about this because we think AI could be a pretty good way to do this. However, it's not something we do today. What we have, though, is this app generation through a prompt where if your prompt is detailed enough to be able to describe the web app that you want to have in Bubble, we're going to be generating the first version of this application that will be fairly close to what you're trying to clone. Not a fan of the word cloning, be careful with just copying other people's work. But that's the way I would recommend to do this. How can I get Bubble certificate? So I assume this is about the certification that we offer for Skillset. I mean, it's on our website. If you go, I forgot exactly the URL, probably bubble.io/certification, I think, or just Google Bubble certification and you'll find it. I recommend taking it, by the way, like especially for freelancers. What we find in practice is that people that are looking for building help trust much more people who have the certification. So I think if you're thinking about making a living out of Bubble services, there is actually real value, and we see that from our side, investing some time learning. It's a way to show that you know the platform pretty well. Are there any plans to add more math methods? Not in the short term. This is typically the kind of things where I think you could totally, you can do it. You can write a little JavaScript code with a plugin editor if you need. So this is not something that is blocking people, but something that is not easy to do today. And so given all the things we have to work on, and again, the focus on AI quality, it would be, I think, a waste of time for us to invest on that because it's not going to unlock people. It's just going to make some people's life, and frankly, not that many people, because if you actually think about it, not many people need very advanced math features in their applications. And so the ROI of a feature like that versus investing on AI quality is just not the same. What are the financial perspectives for Bubble? Interesting question. We're a private company, so I can't really, and a private company and Bubble in particular, I don't have the habits of sharing our financial position. Like this is something that is private, and it's better kept private for many reasons. What I will say is that we're very financially stable. We're not one of these companies that is burning cash without thinking, hoping that we can just raise another round and keep gambling the business like this. Josh and I have bootstrapped the business, meaning we have self-financed everything for 7 years before raising money. And this is deeply rooted in our culture. Even though we've raised lots of money, like back in 21, we did a major round. And we have been investing that money. So to be very clear, we have been losing money for some time because that's what it means to invest money. We haven't burned that much cash compared to what other players in the space might do. And so we're very stable today. Like the survival, there's no concern at all about the survival of the business from a financial point of view. I have built Bubble apps. However, I have used Webflows for starting homepages for better loading speed. Is this something I can do within Bubble? So a couple of thoughts here. First of all, I've already touched on the loading page time. We're not aware of a widespread issue here. So if you have a landing page that is built on Bubble that is not loading very fast, please flag that to our team, because there is probably something we can do to help look into the app. The second thing I would say is, if someone wants to build a landing page of their application with Webflow or another CMS, so content management system like Framer, and then use Bubble for the web application of their business, that's totally cool with me. And I don't think it's actually a bad experience for users either. At the end of the day, Bubble is an application builder, whether it's web or native. And with applications, SEO is not that important actually, because usually most of the content is going to be public once people are logged in. So in fact, if you build a web application, often you do not want your content to be indexed by search engines, because you want people to create an account first. And that's why a lot of platforms, they're going to have a blog on a different CMS. So Webflow, for instance, or their homepage and blog do a little bit the same thing to ensure they're well indexed on the topics, and then people create an account in the application and then start searching, querying the data of the application. So it's not the primary use case for Bubble to build landing pages. And if it works better to use Webflow, great. We're very friendly with Webflow. I've seen a ton of people do domain.com on Webflow and then app.domain.com with Bubble, and that works great. If your application is homepage can be built on Bubble and good performance, and again, reach out if it's not. I think it's better to put everything under the same place, but it's totally cool if it's not and it works well. Do you see more opportunities for junior Bubble developers in startups, agencies, or freelancing? It's a tough way to say. I don't know. I think there are definitely needs everywhere. I meet a lot of founders starting their companies, their app on Bubble, and then scaling their business in need of Bubble talent, because at some point when the business starts scaling, they don't build the apps themselves, and they start having to manage people, raise money, maybe do some sales themselves. And so there is definitely a need for good Bubble talent to join some startups. And you can see that on the forum, on LinkedIn, many places. That said, I'll hear the same thing from agencies. So there's definitely a need there. And then for freelancers, it's not like someone that is, I don't have as much data here, but if startups are looking for Bubble talent, they would probably be fine hiring a freelancer if they cannot find someone full-time. In general, I think, and this is not about Bubble, this is in general, freelancing is great because it gives you freedom, but being a full-time employee, whether it's a startup or an agency, gives you more predictability and career growth. So it depends a little bit what you're optimizing for. Why are you limiting the file storage add-on to 2 terabytes? That feels pretty light if you're building a production app with a large number of files to manage. This has not come up, frankly. So thank you for flagging this. I'll take this to the team. I think there might be something we can look at here. I'm not over technical limitation here, but there might be one. In practice, we haven't heard too much about that. But if that's blocking, it's good you're flagging this, because this would be the type of things I would very happily look into removing. What LLMs are underneath your vibe coding features? I'm not a fan of the vibe coding word. Let's say, the vibe coding experience or the vibe experience. But anyway, we use a mix. It's a mix of Anthropic's Claude and ChatGPT. AppGen being a little bit more in Claude and ChatGPT being more in the agent. But in practice, a lot of the things we do behind the scenes is we try to optimize to use the best model, best being both in terms of quality and speed, because models do take time to get back to you sometimes, to ensure the best quality for the user. And so it fluctuates, frankly. Whenever a new model comes out, our team assesses it, changes it, and then we make decisions on what is a particular task that we want that LLM to take versus another one. Today, Claude and ChatGPT, but that might change in the future. Can a Bubble app be a long-term project that lasts 10, 15 years? I hope so. I mean, that means your business is doing very well if you can do this. I have seen apps today that are been running for almost 10 years at this point. Maybe not 10 years, but apps that were created in like 2017 is when we started getting like real users. Before that, it was like a very much smaller community. And some of these apps are still running today. So it's 8 years. So yes, I think it can definitely do that. We are building for the long term for us. So we're not planning on going anywhere. And so we'll be around in 10 years to ensure your application is still running. I run 2 startups on Bubble. Recently started worrying that I'm not progressing the same rate that I would if I had cloud code and would just use code to move forward. When will we see code support? I'm going to address the statement here more than the question itself, because I actually don't think that generate code support, being able to use code inside Bubble is a solution here. Like, again, we're making here, I'm going to repeat myself a little bit, but this is important. We're making a very opinionated choice here that the right way to build software is visual. It's not code. I'm going to repeat what I just said, which is if you're building a marketplace like Airbnb, you shouldn't be worrying about whether a semicolon is in the right place. You shouldn't be worrying about if, then, else. You should be worrying about what my page looks like. Where are the buttons on the page? How is an apartment going to be described? Does it have pictures? Does it have an address? How do I describe the price? And these concepts, these business concepts, are exactly the kind of things that you deal with when you build on Bubble. And I just think it's a better way to build. The fact that we're still using code today, to me, feel almost a history accident. Now, LLMs have made code easier to produce today, and so in some ways, code is tracking back, and code is becoming cool again compared to maybe 5 years ago because it's easier to produce. But it doesn't change the fundamental thing, though, that really having to deal with semicolons and if then else is not the way I think software should be built in the 21st century. So the question here is more because I hear the problem here, which is this person asking the question is saying, I might be going faster because I know how to code. It's a big caveat here to keep in mind. The person knows how to code. Why might be moving faster if I can just manipulate code out of Claude? And that's because our AI is lagging behind today. And that's something that we're very honest with ourselves. Our AI experience, our agent, is not as good as asking Claude to generate code. We think we're going to catch up pretty quickly. I think a lot of the hard work that we had to do, the initial plumbing to ensure that we could start improving the agent fast enough, is now behind us. So things will get better. And then I will argue that what we offer is going to be the best of both worlds, which will just need some time, frankly. Can the database be hosted somewhere else for compliance reasons, government or stuff like this? Somewhere else in terms of location, yes. This is, that goes back a little bit to the question about European servers. That's typically, that's what an enterprise plans would do. So if you're dealing with the government, I would strongly recommend you to be in touch with our team to talk about an enterprise plans, because usually government have other requirements than just data location. But today, if you're on an enterprise plan with us, you can have your data stored with AWS on any location AWS offers, which at this point is not every country in the world, but many places in the world. What's the most powerful yet overlooked Bubble feature that developers should understand better? Great question. I'm biased here. Maybe other people in the Bubble world would say something different, but I will say the debugger. Like, invest time learning how the debugger works is going to save you so much time after to understand how your application works. And if you start seeing behaviors in your application that is not what you're expecting, go step by step in the debugger, inspect an element to understand why some conditions are being applied versus some others. It's actually pretty cool. I'm proud of it, I guess, because I built that back in the day, where you can start, inspecting dynamic expressions to understand why they're being evaluated that way, and that will save you a lot of time. I know for a fact that people are not using it enough. It's a bit too small at the bottom and people don't see it, but really, that will make your life much better as a Bubble developer. Has there been any success stories from Bubble users that made millions? Yes, 100%. I invite you to, go to bubble.io/showcase, go to my social platforms, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter, or X, you would see me showcasing some of these stories. I know some stories of some people that sold their businesses and effectively became millionaires after the transaction. I cannot share that publicly, though, because personal finances is something that is sensitive. But we've definitely seen some businesses that generated millions in revenue and millions in acquisition value, in enterprise value through an acquisition. For someone who has just completed a Bubble bootcamp, what practical step would you recommend to land their first job or paid project? I would assume here is someone trying to freelance, because pet project is freelancing, or a job at an agency. It's the same as a designer, like build a portfolio. And a portfolio is basically show that you can build apps in a clean way. And so get better at Bubble and build applications that then you can showcase to people. I think is the best way to do this. And then being active on social platforms. It's true for Bubble. It's true for any other platform. Is usually where people land their first paid projects. Good luck. It's a grind. I've not done that myself. I've never been a freelancer, but I've been a founder myself, trying to sell this thing that is now Bubble in the early years, and it's a grind and it's tough, but it's very rewarding once you do it well and once it starts working. What's the biggest limitation in Bubble today that your team is actively trying to eliminate in the next 12 to 24 months? I don't like talking about 12 to 24 months. Again, the world is changing so quickly right now that we are looking at like shorter time frames, but let's say for the between now and the end of the year, the quality of our AI agent, we need that to get much better. And so that's really the focus for the team. At BubbleCon, there were discussions about enabling more structured workflow controls, parallel execution, looping conditions. I've already responded to this question at the beginning, so I assume the person wasn't there. But as I said, branching is definitely on the roadmap, something we're doing some groundwork today. The hope is to get that out for the second part of the year, but this is still something we're finalizing, so it's not a firm commitment. And we're at now like 40-ish minutes, so I'm maybe take like another couple of questions. By the way, this is the same as last session in January. It's a lot of questions, and both from a product company direction and more advice, and that's great. And I'm already looking forward for the next one in March. Any plan to implement custom data center location around the world based on client's location without enterprise plans? I've already answered that question. For you, we'll start with Europe. We have been delaying that a little bit given how much things have changed in the world, but we definitely want to do it. I'm not going to share a timeline right now. For large data sets in repeating groups, should we always prioritize server-side filtering, or will Bubble client-side filtering become equally efficient? So great question. Yes. If you write it like that, yes, 100% server-side filtering, because by definition, client-side means you send all the data to the client and then you do the filtering. And this cannot be faster because you send more data. And so even though internet is getting better everywhere, in particular on phones, it still means you have to process more things. So you should always prioritize server-side stuff. Now, the question, when we're building Bubble, ideally, we don't want people to think about that. Like if a Bubble user is starting to think about server-side and client-side, that means we failed somewhere. And so our work and the work of the platform team here, when they look at latencies, I mentioned, looking at how fast queries go, they're going to try to find ways to automatically take some stuff that worked before running on the client and move that to the server. This is the type of things you shouldn't have to worry about in the future. If you are in a situation today where you know that you're doing something that is client-side and not server-side, I would always go for client server-side. It's always better. We need plugin builders in mobile urgently. Yes, the team is working on this. This is something that we're hoping to ship in April, so it's just a matter of like a few weeks now. And I take one last spicy question about pricing. Can you introduce, for the record, I do not read these questions. I'm reading these questions live, and so I might regret taking this question. But can you introduce a lower plan below the starter plan, maybe $10 a month, to allow for more builders, founders, especially in developing countries? Maybe one day. I'm not going to give a response right now about pricing. This is sensitive, and I'm not going to do that on the spot. I will disclose that I think back in 2021, we actually did test, and maybe some people in the audience did see that as an A/B test, a cheaper plan around like $10 or $15. I forgot. And it was not working very well in a sense that it just meant like lower revenue for us and not more people building. So I don't know whether this is something that would work again. I would love to get back into experimenting from a pricing point of view. It's not the priority right now. Like, for people who have been on Bubble for some time in the audience, if you're here, we've done a few pricing changes in the past, and they tend to be stressful for the community. And when it's stressful for the community, it's stressful for the Bubble team, something that maybe the community does not realize. But when the community is upset about something, whether it's pricing or something else, the team is also getting upset and sad because our employees want to do well for our users, And so when users are not happy, the team is not happy. And when the team is not happy, this gets in the way of work. And so I'm not currently eager to start more pricing projects. Once AI is in a great quality, we look at things. I am very aware that we have a very diverse user base when it comes to location and purchasing powers. Brazil is our second country, and then we have a lot of Southeast Asia is really big. We actually start seeing some activity in Africa as well. So this is something that is we're aware, and I know that with currencies and everything, like our current plans might be a little bit high. It's not something that we're going to take action in the short term, but something that we'll keep monitoring, and when that makes sense, we'll do something. We are actually, I'm talking about Brazil, we are working on something that will allow people to pay with their own currencies in the future. Like we're working with Stripe on this, which will have an impact. It's not going to change our prices, but it's going to change how expensive it is to use us, because in some countries, paying in US dollars leads to significant commissions for banks. And so if you can decide to pay in Brazilian reals, for instance, you would have not that commissions, which I think will make a difference for people. One last question, I guess I couldn't finish on pricing. From your perspective, is Bubble now mature enough to be considered a permanent infrastructure for a serious SaaS business, or should founders still plan for a future migration once they reach a scale? I mean, I have a vested interest here, and I'm biased, but yes, it's 100% a permanent infrastructure. We've been around for 14 years. Not many platforms have been around for that long, and so we're definitely not going anywhere. And in fact, I talked about our financial health a minute ago. We have a lot of resources to make things better, and that's what we're working on right now. So yes, 100%, I do consider us a mature platform. At the same time, what we're trying to do is extremely ambitious. Like people have tried to make, creating software accessible to everyone and hosting it at scale and ensure it doesn't crash and good performance and works on all kind of devices, mobile, web, for a very, very long time. And no one has succeeded. So what we're trying to do is a major undertake, and I consider us very early. So in that sense, we're still early as a company, but we've also been around for like almost 15 years now, like 14 years in maybe 2 or 3 months, and planning on not going anywhere. So yes, I very much consider Bubble as a permanent building solution. If there are things we can do, I'll just wrap up with this. If there are things we can do to help you build, please reach out to us. Like sometimes people think that as we get bigger, we are less in contact with our users. And in the past, we may have been appear to be a little bit out of touch for some people. And it's definitely not the current mood for the team. So please be in touch. We have a team internally that can help answer questions, feedback, whether it comes through the forum, the community. I'm actually spending a lot of time on these two platforms right now, like whether it's Slack or the forum, to get some insight. So if there are things you can surface to us that will help you build better, please do, because that will be very helpful for us to make the platform better for everyone. And on that note, I'll thank everyone who has been with us today. And this is fun. I actually enjoy doing these more and more. So looking forward for the next one, probably around the second week of March. So have a great month of February, everyone, and we'll see you in a month.